Excellent.
Yeah, recording
morning,
done.
everyone. Anyway, it was a lovely morning. Right, we look at the agenda now. On item 1, apologies for absence.
Councillor Harries.
Right. If we can list them as we go along, because some may come in to the meeting later due to technical problems. Item 2, declarations of interest. If anybody got any interest and they would like to declare it, or when we're going through the meeting, that'd be great.
Are there any declarations?
No.
Nope.
No, excellent. All right. We'll move to item 3 then, chairperson's announcements. I haven't got any that I'm aware of. Item 4, to receive the minutes of the Finance Audits and Performance Management meeting held on the 27th of July 2020. Page
3.
Right. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. And finally, page 10. Is everybody happy to agree the minutes?
I'll move that, Chair.
I'll second that.
Yes, thank you both.
I've got a query on page 6, Chair.
Did I hear somebody say
Yeah.
something then?
Councillor Colbrand wanted to come in.
Yep. Page 6,
Yes.
Chair. On page 6, I'm down. It's got Councillor W. Colbrand. I can't find it now. On the bit about following up on audit.
Yeah, I can't see it. Is somebody going
We'll
Page
do
6,
it.
second paragraph down. Page 6, second paragraph down.
On the bottom of page 8, last paragraph on page 8.
Oh,
Page
page
8,
8.
yeah. Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
beg your pardon.
Yeah, that's right, then. Okay, then.
Yeah, we'll get that
Yeah,
changed.
That's it. Thank you, Malcolm. Anybody else got anything they'd like to raise from the minutes?
Chair, just to remind members, obviously we've talked about the statement of approval of the statement of accounts, signing off the statement of accounts and the completion of the audit. Members will notice it's not on this agenda today, and the reason for that is we're now taking it to the Fire Authority in a week's time. So all well and good, you'll be seeing the final statement there.
Okay, thanks for that. Everybody remember that now for the main meeting. If we move on to item 5 then, the health check of priority actions and quarterly 1 progress against the statutory performance indicators. That's on page 11.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take you through the first part. I think Alison's going to take you through the second part on the performance indicators. This is a Q1 report, so obviously has to be read in the light of it being Q1, and of course for a lot of that period we were in lockdown. So certainly on the strategic theme commentary, a lot has moved on in the intervening 3 months. You'll notice there are some actions that are highlighted red. A lot of those weren't due to be started yet or have been slightly delayed due to COVID. And certainly teams are reviewing their actions in the light of the new situation that we found ourselves in. I wasn't proposing to go through each of the strategic themes in turn. You've got a high-level summary within the report that you will have read. Majority of the themes are all on target as at Q1. So happy to take any questions on those strategic themes before we move on to the performance indicator part.
Anybody got any questions for Sally to answer, or Tudor?
Councillor Davis has.
Oh, very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go on. Yeah,
on page 18,
Yes.
come on.
on the 6th paragraph, JFC staff have been recording passing descriptions in conjunction with the Gwent police. Although the police have shown little interest, could I have that clarified, Mr. Chairman, because that concerns me.
Fair point.
Yeah, we'll get some further information on that, Chair, and forward that on.
Excellent.
Because if they're into something, Mr. Chairman, I'm a bit concerned with that statement there that,
Yeah.
either they're interested or they're not interested.
I was on that page actually, Tudor. You got it before me. I got it marked. Anybody else got any other questions for Sal? No.
On page 23, down the bottom of the page, Sal.
Yeah.
It's reference to the care, health, and healthcare, and it said CHC. Is that the CHC? Nyram Bevan CHC with a different name? I'm not sure. It's about the third paragraph.
Yeah, no, I can see that one. It's usually the Care Healthcare Commission, isn't it?
Oh, but it's confusing because the Community Health Council got the same abbreviations, you see?
Yeah.
I think it's CHC.
It is. Yeah, it is the CHC. It's the
Yeah.
And they changed the name, have they? To Care and Healthcare then?
I think the
No, I think it is.
Right, yeah.
I think the long version's wrong, Tudor.
Because I was on that for 15 years and I was a bit, all right.
Excellent, good spotting. Anybody else? No, for Sally? No? We wanted to move on, Sal. We go on to the performance indicators.
Yeah, I think Alison's going to take you through a high-level summary of the performance indicators.
Yeah, we're going to take members through to page 35, please. And that gives you the summary of our performance indicators for the strategic indicators. As you can see from our sunburst there, we have one which is over 5% of target, which is our total false alarms we've attended, and one amber, which is up to 5% over target. Dwelling fires confined to room of origin. So I'll take you through each of these briefly and take any questions as we go as well. Turning over to page 36, the first performance indicator is total fires attended. So at the moment, that's slightly up on the first quarter by 3% to 57. Majority being from grass fires and refuse. And as you'll note, accidental dwelling fires are down by 13% and vehicle fires down by 13%. In light of more people being in their homes through the first quarter as well, due to our current situation, I think that's quite a pleasing one for the Fire Authority. We do note an increase in the Vale of Glamorgan based on their Q1 target. So we're doing a bit of work around that through community safety, but just to reassure members that in excess of 40 to 50% of these fires that we're not actually taking any action, they're minor cooking fires. And pleasing to note, Blaenau Gwent have seen a 27% decrease in fires, accidental dwelling fires. The next one is total false alarms attended. That's gone up by 222%. As you will aware, lots of premises were closed up at this time, and as they reopened, we did see a spike of accidental actuations, if we like. But we still got the unwanted fire signals team, which are working to continue reducing that. Mainly, you can see that false alarms, good intent, but ones have gone up. So that makes it.
I'm back.
Premises.
Bless you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Okay, residential homes, that was down by 28%, and hospitals down as well. So although that they're rising, with the areas we're seeing which we concentrated our efforts on, we've seen that reduction. Okay, page 37, total RTCs attended. Obviously due to less cars, people travelling around in that quarter, we saw our road traffic collisions go down by 53%, so a massive downturn, and the lowest numbers for 5 years. So that's really interesting. The percentage of people that we've actually had to release from their vehicles is actually up though, so they seem to be slightly more severe than normal. And June in particular, I think, when people started going back onto the road again. So community safety are having a look at that piece of work to see if we can influence that in any way. Total special service calls attended is the next one. There's a 13% in reduction here, a number of calls. And we've been doing a bit of work about what we call affecting entry. So that's where people have been locked out and can't get into their homes. We've seen a 61% increase. And I guess that's due to more people being in their homes and not going out so much. So that's probably affected that one. Sadly, though, suicide attempts during this period were on the increase, and we've seen them go from 10 to 20. Obviously, due to some of the pressures, perhaps isolation and things like that. And we have been assisting other agencies more. So, but overall, down on that target. And then if I take you over to page 38, we've got total deaths and injuries in fires. Pleased to report that that's down by 25% this quarter, 8 below the target of 20. However, we did have 5 fatalities and 3 in the same quarter last year. So 3 of these were accidental, 2 deliberate. Overall injuries, slight injuries, they're down by 30%. And then you can see the causes then of the 2 fatalities, which were cooking and the other electrical fault. Okay, so just to reassure members that we do a lot of work around each fire fatality and serious injury, that the whole team look at that and see what we could have done, and look at the backstory as well that led up to it to see if there's anything we can learn. And that takes us on then to total accidental deaths and injuries in fires. Pleased to note that they're down by 23%, so down to 10 from 13 last year. And accidental serious injuries were at 0 this quarter, so I'm pleased to report that. June 20 is the lowest accidental deaths and injuries in 5 years again. And the last one, our favourite, the dwelling fires contained to room of origin. There is a slight increase on this one. So we're down to 82% this quarter compared to last year. And as you will be aware, the target is 85% currently. Cardiff Unitary Authority had the highest numbers with 84% confined to the room of origin. Monmouthshire was the one that was only 67%. So members will be aware that we have on-call stations there, so that might be due to some of the delay there. Happy to take any questions. So Drake.
I think we've got several. We've got Councillor Drake first.
Yeah, I did raise this before. It's always been my concern now. A lot of the properties, particularly new ones being built now, it's all open plan. And now it'd be difficult to confine sort of if it's a fire in the kitchen without it spreading right the way through the whole property. But that's life at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a lot of debate around this, haven't we, Councillor Drake? But we explained this to Welsh Government, but they still obviously like this indicator.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think Councillor Bradwick.
Yes, so thank you, Sally. Alison, spate of kitchen fires and cooking fires, that's gone up dramatically. Obviously, I think it's down to the lockdown. But it'd be very interesting to, you said in Cardiff, obviously Cardiff got a higher proportion than the other authorities. You know, can you see the trend going down now for that or not?
We seem to have, funny enough, I think Dean Loader this morning has done a piece for the BBC. You'll note that we're talking about 5 cooking fires a week, accidental ones. We're seeing an increase of chip pan fires again, which is unusual. So I guess it's where people are not going out to get takeaways and things like that. So they're digging out old equipment that they've got using. So community safety are doing a piece of work around that.
Oh, that's good. Thank you much, Alison. That's brilliant. Thanks, yeah.
I think Councillor White wanted to come in. You'll have to unmute yourself, Councillor White.
Thank you. As we know, the fire authorities are restricting what they're doing at the moment due to COVID, which is perfectly understandable. So do you expect to see a figure, with the work you do on fire alarms and, some of the preemptive work, would you expect an increase now over the next 6 months? And when do you start to look to return to do some of that preemptive work? Do you have a date in mind or just playing it by ear at the moment?
Okay, so up until the end of July, we were relying on our community safety people to go out and do the very high risk home safety checks. But since the end of July, stations have been doing them again. We've also gone to an online system for people if they want to do their own assessment of home safety checks. And what we're doing then is if they're able-bodied, and able to fit their own smoke detectors, we're actually dropping packs off to them so we don't have to go into their homes. So since July, we've been working pretty much back to normal.
I understand care and repair in my area are going into people's houses. Could they fit alarms for people? If would you encourage them to get in touch with care and repair, something like that? Could they fit the alarms?
Yeah, well, for many years we did have a partnership with Care and Repair to do that, so they still got that ability to do it.
I think Councillor Bradwick wants to come back in.
Yes, thank you, Sally. On that point, Alison, you said about the online booking online. It'd be useful if we, as members, could have the link so we could share it. Because I think I can send that into all my members of all RCT elected members so they can advise their people. I think that'd be really good for the online one.
Yeah, no problem at all. We can get that sent out to all members after the meeting.
Right, thank you ever so much, Alison. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
I think Steve Franks from Audit Wales wanted to comment.
I can hear you all, but I can't see you, unfortunately. I'm on Skype. I was just going to say, having a look at comparable fire and rescue authorities before being here today, all these stats are very, very similar to actually what I'm seeing in places like Humberside and up in Newcastle, Tyne and Wear. But very interestingly, having spent years and years looking through various fire investigation reports, the elder percentage of dwelling fires confined to room of origin, it's a direct link with the quality and age of the housing stock, and also people actually closing the doors at night. So there's actually a direct link there. But actually, overall, so apart from the old sort of false alarms, I think it's a pretty good set of stats, personally.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Yeah, thank you.
You muted myself. I don't know what you're doing. Can I ask, where we're saying we're sending all this information and liaising with the community engagement team, we came up with an idea on Friday, and I rang Richard Prendergast with the idea, and he was quite aghast with it, to think how good it was. Due to the COVID, a lot of these food banks and these community centres are liaising a lot with the communities who are home. Can we get the community engagement team to give information and stuff we can put out to the communities?
Yeah, we've done that. We've taken.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, we have linked in with all the food banks and the community hubs, and there's actually information that goes into each donation that they give to people on the services that we can provide. So we have linked in with those. Yeah, they were one of the first we linked in with.
Yeah, well, our area haven't had anything, so that's why.
Okay.
Because it's something we come up with. We just thought, well, look, we're giving them other leaflets for benefits and everything else. Why can't we give them something about prevention at home? And and
Okay,
link.
I'll follow that up with community safety and make sure that Bridgend area, they get those the information that they need as well. I'm aware that the station's also been helping out, for food banks as well, doing some of the packing for them.
Yeah.
Al, it's not Bridgend.
No, I'll follow that up with Jason.
You are. Must be there. Anybody else got any questions for? Well, I will say our authority stuff is very, very good to hand out to members. It's an excellent idea. I mean, I put mine out to all the councillors the responses I get back is tremendous. So I think it's very, very good work we're doing with that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Steve. Totally. Yes, excellent. Yeah.
Anybody else got any questions now, or do we want to? Are they happy with that report? Right then. Everybody's happy then because nobody said anything. We'll move on to item 6 then, the Revenue Monitoring Report 2021, page 51.
Chair, morning members, morning guests.
Morning.
Yeah, first revenue monitoring report of the financial year. Standard format. Appendix 1 sets out the subjective analysis of the budget, revisions to the budget, and then the forecast for the year, and including the actual spends to date. And then you got various appendices attached, and Appendix 2 shows the potential impact and movements on the reserves position based using the forecast, the overall forecast data that we've got in the report. The forecast for the year to date is that we're projecting an overspend of 779,000, which is largely due to overspend within the employee area of the budget of 859,000, and then offset with savings of 80,000 against the non-employee costs within the budget. In terms of the overspend on employee costs, a large proportion of this is due to the additional level of cover that's been provided across the on-call part of the service through the COVID period, and that's sort of two elements to that. Is through the strategic reserve, which is operational, whole-time operational staff providing cover at on-call stations, but there's been a sort of large increase in the amount of availability and cover given by people who predominantly through their sort of secondary, the primary employment have obviously either been made redundant or on furlough, and then able to give additional commitment to the service. So we've seen a sort of an increase in the level of cover, which comes with the associated increase in costs as well, but obviously given a much higher proportion of cover for the service in the on-call stations. There's also been an increase of £194,000 with the pension costs, and that's the additional employers' contributions with the level set coming through after the budget was finalised. We've also had further ill health retirements, adding £91,000 to the forecast, but there has been some reduction to the travel and subsistence costs of £46,000. Obviously, that's due to the reduced amount of business travel around the service and across the meetings across the country, which are now taking place by Starleaf and other electronic methods. There's an underspend against the premises costs of 278k, and that's predominantly due to expected increases in the national non-domestic rates, which we saw in the previous financial year. But they haven't come through within the current year. So we forecasted a sort of similar level of increase, but fortunately those costs haven't seemed to hit the service. So there's a big underspend there. Then on to supplies and services, sort of the large part of the overspend within supplies and services. Members will be familiar with that. Every year we continue to overspend against our home fire safety equipment budget, and this is through the member supporting the maintained activity levels within community safety and the hardware that they provide to the communities. traditionally, in the last few years, we've had that we sort of recouped that underspend at the year end the overspend at the year end through underspends in the other two services, Mid and West and North, and then Welsh Government have sort of allowed us to have additional grant at the year end to offset that. But obviously, at this point in time, we can't guarantee any additional grant funding for that, so we continue to forecast the overspend in that area. The other big overspend is obviously against the additional equipment that we've had to buy through the COVID period. And that has largely been for the PPE, operational PPE for our staff, and for additional ICT equipment to allow more remote working, home working, and for the additional sort of video conferencing facilities. There has been a lot of that expenditure has been offset with grant money coming in from Welsh Government. With the exception of 50% of the ICT costs, Welsh Government have refunded all the other expenditure, albeit they're refunding on a quarterly basis. So we're incurring the expenditure, but not getting the income back in until each quarter has lapsed. So then the other two areas to note within the report really are the capital costs. Is a large underspend there, and that's linked to the minimum revenue provision costs, the charges, which are directly linked to the activity levels within the capital programme, which is the next agenda item. But with the activity levels sort of dropping down in the capital programme, obviously reduce the level of costs in this area. And then lastly, the additional income, obviously with the £220,000 grant funding for COVID, has resulted in additional income within the offsetting within the revenue budget. So, as I said, there is a direct appendices on the COVID expenditure on page 59, and then Appendix 4 sets out all our activity and expenditure profiles against the grant income that we receive from Welsh governments. So I'll stop at that point and take any questions.
Tal, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah.
Davies, I've got.
He was on mute. But Tudor wanted to go first with yourself?
Yes.
Yes. We had a meeting with the Deputy Minister last week on Thursday, I think it was. They're on about the underspend on the COVID-19, and apparently the underspend is 200,000 at the moment between the three authorities. I did emphasise, you know, for them to make sure that we are putting applications in for that they are going to be dealt with. I don't want us go into them and say it doesn't cover that. You know what I mean? This is the point I made to her, because time is of essence, so to get that spent. Have we had that officially at all, Geraint?
No, we've been submitting the claims on a monthly basis to make sure that they're aware of our expenditure levels, but we've only had the income to date up to the end of June. But they've said that they are going to be, they'd rather it be done on a quarterly basis going forward. So they've asked us not to submit the information, even just to wait till every quarter, but we're still going to supply the information so they're aware of our levels of spend. But we won't get the income back until the end of September now.
Yeah, but on again, they'd estimate and they'll have an underspend for the 3 or 5 authorities. I did ask if that proportionally was, we knew what we were going to have, but no, that's the pot at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
As far as I said to her, any funding we want to spend, don't we? That's the point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We don't want to be shoved. We don't want to be pushed to the end of the financial year, and then suddenly we are in the same position.
No, as I said, the activity levels we continuing to support. There has been a reduction in the CS activity, but the forecast is that we'll catch that up and hit our targets for the year end.
Can I ask you now? Though Tudor's raised that about the COVID. If they're not giving us anything for ICT, right, with 50%, how much additional cost of the service is our remote working and everything else? Because it is a cost to it. and yet we can't claim anything back.
Yeah, up to the end of June position, obviously the amount that we weren't able to claim back was in the region of 40,000. But what Welsh Government are rightly saying is that we've got that additional benefit now for future years. So it's not just through the COVID period that we'd be able to continue to have the benefit from that IT ongoing over a number of years. And associated with that is the benefits that come from the staff of flexible working. There's a better impact, obviously, from the environmental aspect. So there's less commuting mileage, less business mileage for meetings. So there are benefits that are coming with it, which is why they say it's not just for the COVID period in itself.
So there is an additional cost, Ed. It's just they're shifting the goalposts for the financial side.
Yeah, it's just that they're happy to pay 50% of the cost, but the rest then is because we're going to get that future benefits out of it.
Could I just say, Mr. Chairman, we understand that. My concern is if we do get to the end of the financial year and we still have an underspend, I think this is a case we can put down to the Welsh Government, you know what I mean? If they can reconsider that factor on the IT issue.
Yeah,
that's all.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Anyone else got any questions? No?
No one's indicating.
Right then. The recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Performance Management Committee note and agree the report content. Is everyone happy with that?
Chair, I can't see all of the members, so we're going to have to go, because this one's for a decision, we're going to have to go through each member in turn. Right. So if I do it for the order on my screen, Councillor Hussey. Councillor Hussey?
Yeah, sorry, Sal. Yeah, agree.
Agree. Councillor Spencer?
On mute, Sal.
Councillor Spencer?
Agree.
Okay, Councillor Colbrand? Councillor Evans?
Agreed.
Councillor Drake?
Agreed.
Councillor White?
Agreed, Sally.
Councillor Smith?
Agreed, and apologies.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. Right, if we move on to item 7, Capital Monitoring Report 2021, page 67.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take this one again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just the latest update then on the capital programme, obviously following on from the July committee. Usual format, Appendix 1 sets out the detail of the capital programme and the associated budgets and forecasts against each. The overall position for the year is that the capital budget is 7.9 million. We're forecasting to spend 6.3 million and then have 2.1 million pounds worth of slippage carried forward into next financial year for various within, which is natural with capital programmes. At the bottom of the page, on page 67, there's a type to amend in the report, which means paragraph 2.11. The overall forecast spend and slippage on property schemes should read £1.6 million spend and slippage of 1.5 million. The report, wasn't updated following the revision to the appendix. So members will be aware, in the last committee, we reported an additional 100k spent to the budget for Pontypridd Fire Station. There's various slippage against schemes, some of which are due to the impacts of COVID and with the sort of co-location schemes. So it's really ongoing discussions with them. Newin Fire Station, there'll be a report going to the fire authority next week regarding the potential movement on either refurbishment or rebuild of Newin Fire Station. And then probably the biggest shift since the last report is in the planned and preventative maintenance element of the budget. What funding was set aside originally for roof repairs at Cardiff Central, but we're doing further investigation and survey work there. Whilst that's ongoing, we're taking the opportunity, or asking members to take the opportunity to realign the budget and to allocate approximately £70,000 of this budget to install electric charging infrastructure at headquarters for electric pool vehicles. The current pool of 20 vehicles are coming to the end of their lease, and we're looking to extend the lease for a short period whilst we finish the tender process and potential installation of electric charging points, and then replace all those 20 vehicles with electric vehicles on a lease scheme. And those will be used as pool cars for travelling throughout the service area, business purposes and external to the service as well. Obviously, depending on the range and the charging infrastructure external. But I think it's a positive shift. Obviously, with the carbon reduction report plan being approved back in July, I think it's a shift in the right direction now, and taking the opportunity really from available funding here to start putting the infrastructure into the service. The plan with this is that we'd have 20 charging points in headquarters and 2 charging points, one in the east, one in the west of the service. But the tender does look for a sort of rolling programme to have charging points across all of our sites over the next 3 to 4 years. So obviously coming back for additional funding to carry on that rollout. But this is just the initial start of the project for headquarters and those 2 stations. In terms of vehicle replacement programme, the only real change there is a slight overspend of £15,000 related to work on the prime mover, purchase of a prime mover, and this is offset by grant funding, so there's no impact to the overall cost of the service. Similarly, operational equipment, an overspend of £401,000 against the operational equipment budget, and that's for helmets, gloves, multimedia. But the main part of that is for the LCD detection unit, which is a vehicle and the associated detection unit equipment on that vehicle at a cost of £320,000. But again, this has been offset by grant funding from Welsh Government. And the patient management system is being delayed until the following year. The page 69 sets out those additional overspends and the potential funding impacts. And then the appendices on page 71 shows the detail against each area within the programme and the associated or planned sort of funding analysis at the bottom. Stop there and take any questions.
Councillor Drake.
I was just going to ask one question. Are you experiencing any difficulties getting replacement equipment? Because not all the firms are actually functioning at the moment. And there is one thing I wanted to... I got a digger outside laying a new lawn, and I couldn't hear everything. On page 67, under property, and it's got property schemes are £2 to 1.2 million. Did you actually say that would be changed, or is that incorrect?
Yeah, there was a typo. There was a typo in that original report, but the figures have changed to 1.6 million and 1.5 million.
I didn't think it was going to be £2.
Wishful thinking.
Sorry about that, but I got this digger outside and I just couldn't hear anything. But
I do ask people to spend wisely, but not that wisely.
As far as the equipment is concerned, are you experiencing any difficulties getting replacements?
We did initially. I think there was sort of natural delays, but I think the majority of our suppliers are catching up now. So I think we were experiencing some delays, but we sort of, we are having the ongoing dialogue with all of our suppliers, so we're aware of any delays, but the majority are trying to catch up and get ahead of the schedule.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to turn myself off now because the digger's getting closer.
Anyone else got any questions?
No, no one else is indicating.
All right then. So the recommendations, members, are that we note the budget and the progress of capital schemes, approve alterations identified in Appendix 1, and associated movements in funding streams are approved. Are we happy today? You're going to do the each member, Sal?
I'm going to have to do each member because I can't see everyone again. So Councillor Hussey.
Yeah, agree, Sal.
Councillor Spencer.
Agreed.
Councillor Colbrand.
Yes, agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Drake.
Agreed.
Councillor Smith.
Agreed.
Councillor White. Councillor White, you'll have to unmute yourself. Was that agreed?
That's agreed.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Is that everyone?
That's everyone done? Yes, unanimous.
Right, if you look down to item 8 then, which is the 2019 to 20 Annual Treasury Management Review on page 73.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall these reports from the number of years that we've been doing them now. There are a series of 3 reports every year. One of them is a forward plan for the coming year. One of them is a mid-year review of activity, and the other is a look back at the previous year in terms of the sort of outturn position. This is the final one of those, so it's the 2019-20 review of last year's activity. I suppose, in a sense, we've already touched on a number of the key factors at play here. Our spend on capital was slightly lower under the capital programme than we thought, and as a result of that, most of our Treasury indicators have come out below the original planned figures that we'd agreed at the beginning of the year. I don't really want to say much more than that, Chair, unless members have got any questions. All the indicators are in accordance with those originally set, so there's no particular matters of concern that I want to draw to members' attention.
I've got Councillor Smith wanting to come in.
Oh, only one little comment. On bullet point 2.3 bullet point, I couldn't quite understand the last sentence. I think it needs perhaps rewording. Bullet point 2.3 of the report, and it was the last sentence. Also, just NatWest, is that the one that's the controversy is associated with today? But no comments other than that. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm just looking for the particular comment you've made on NatWest, Councillor Smith. Can you indicate where that was? Oh, sorry.
You're on mute, Councillor Smith.
Page 73, the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm a bit apprehensive. I got booked in nicely this morning. Everything was going fine, and then it collapsed. So I'm a trifle cautious touching anything. Your issues notes, 2.3, it was just the final sentence that I thought needed a bit of rewording, perhaps, because I couldn't make sense of it. And then the controversy is all about money laundering, isn't it, on the...
We'll have a look at the wording in future, Councillor Smith.
Right.
The current controversy on money laundering is not affecting us. We've not been involved in any money laundering, to my knowledge. I think it's my responsibility to ensure that doesn't happen. Obviously, we will be keeping a close eye on any fallout for that in terms of the banking sector, but at this moment in time, it's not directly affecting us.
Oh, I have every confidence in you, Mr. Burton. Thank you.
And me. Anybody else got any questions for Chris?
Nobody's indicating, no.
Yeah, excellent. So the recommendations for members of the committee recommend that the Fire Rescue Authority note the annual Treasury Management Review for 2019-20 and approve the actual 2019-20 prudential and treasury indicators set therein. That's good. And these are new chief.
Okay, Councillor Hussey.
Yeah, noted and agreed.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Spencer.
Yes. Noted.
So you agree the recommendation?
Yes, agreed.
Okay. Councillor Colbrand.
Yes, agreed.
There's some in that drawer.
Councillor White.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Smith.
Agreed.
Councillor Drake.
Noted and agreed.
Okay, that was unanimous.
Thanks, everyone. And we then move on to item 9, which is the medium-term financial strategy, and it's a reserve strategy and budget update. Page 79.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will again be familiar with this report from each year's budget cycle that we go through. It's probably worthwhile saying we commenced with a medium-term financial strategy, which sort of spanned a 5-year period, slightly longer period. We've been gradually foreshortening that period over the last couple of years for a number of reasons. The one fundamental one was that the Welsh Government were involved in their governance and funding review. And all indications were there might be a significant change to the funding regime for fire authorities. So we've really been waiting for the outcome of that for a number of years now, and it looks like nothing significant is going to change as of this moment in time. But obviously, all of these things have a tendency to come back on the table from time to time. The other factor as well, which is underpinning the longer-term review of the finances of the fire authority, has been the whole issue around pay and pensions, the widening role of the firefighter, and all the associated issues with that. And again, none of those really have come to much fruition. We've had a number of court cases on the pensions that have thrown the pension schemes into complete disarray again. And you'll see that at Fire Authority next week on the statement of accounts. So the medium-term financial plan itself, the sort of period we've been looking at, has been shortening in respect of those items. And what we need to do really, or what we are hoping to do, is start to lengthen it again now as some of those things came to fruition. And we've started some discussions on that as a result of the post-COVID recovery period that we're in, to start looking at our major project work and start looking at our activity levels over the next couple of years now, and hopefully get some certainty in terms of what we intend to do as a fire authority. The concern, I suppose, around the current financial climate is that we've got no real forward financial indicators at this moment in time, either from Welsh Government or from national government, around what our finances are going to look like. And the concern, I suppose, now with a kind of £2 trillion national debt is we don't really know which way government intend to move, whether it will be to another period of austerity or whether it will be to a period of investment, whether it be public investment or other investment, to try and actually keep the country moving. So there's a huge number of unknowns in the in respect of the medium-term financial plan at this moment in time. So what we've done for this year at the moment is simply concentrate on what next year's immediate implications are. We know that Welsh Government made a bit of a sea change last year in local government funding. They moved from an austerity model to the first substantial increase in council funding for a number of years, with a 4.3% average increase. What we don't know is whether that's going to continue this year. We'll have to wait and see. And all indications are at the moment that Welsh Government are not going to make any budget announcements until well towards the end of this year, so towards December. And I'll come back to that when we talk about our budget-making decision timetable for next year towards the end of the report. Perhaps no surprise in terms of the forward look that the key issue for the authority is pay and pensions. The report does mention that there was a recent agreement to chief officers' pay award increase of 2.75%. I would stress that's Green Book chief officers, not necessarily fire chief officers. But what has subsequently happened after this report was issued was that the whole of the rest of the Green Book staff pay award was also agreed at 2.75. So I think that gives a clear signal that pay awards are on the up. We actually only provided 2% in the current year's budget. So we're effectively 0.75% down on the current year's budget already in terms of pay provision. And perhaps the interesting thing will be that the Grey Book Award, which has been initially settled at 2% for this year, may well come under pressure for next year as well. So what we're anticipating in terms of pay, therefore, is over the 2-year period, this and next, we're expecting to see it probably around a 4.75% increase in pay across the whole of the pay structure. I've already touched on pensions. We're still really no clear about what the cost of pensions are. The government consultation exercise in terms of the choices that firefighters need to take in respect to their pensions will impact the costs that will fall on the fire service. And there's still an ongoing dispute within the court cases about who should pay for that, whether that's a local cost or whether it's a national government cost. And again, until those cases sort of find their way through the employment tribunal and the courts, we won't really know that. The best we can do at the moment is plan on a kind of no change scenario, I think, at this moment. In respect of the other key items in the report, we're still doing work around the budget area and the budget development, including some of the areas of savings which Geraint outlined in the budget monitoring report for this financial year. But there are a couple of things that we know will come out. The one is proposals to change the licensing model for our software provision, and that is likely to increase costs for the Fire Authority over the next couple of years. And also, of course, the capital programme needs financing, and we build off the Treasury management report the anticipated costs of the capital programme on the revenue budget, and that in turn will come through as an increase as well. What we've done in the report is just pull all that together in a summary table on paragraph 4.11 of the report, page 82, and it just gives you an indication of what the likely pressures are for the Fire Authority for next year in respect to some of those key areas. And the headline news on the bottom at this moment in time is there's likely to be a possible overall increase of 4.3% in the net revenue budget. Now, as I say, there is work continuing, so it's not a done deal. We're not asking members to agree a budget of 4.3% up next year at this moment in time at all. There is more work to be done on that. There's more work to identify potential savings and to sort of rationalise some of the costs within that. But it gives members, I think, an early look at what the possible scenario is for the Fire Authority's budget next year. In terms of the budget timetable, members will be aware that over the past couple of years, we've kind of failed in our ambition to try and agree a budget in December. We managed that a couple of years back to give councils really an early heads up about what the likely fire contributions would be. And we haven't managed it for a variety of reasons, mainly to do with some of the things I've already outlined earlier in the meeting. And the indications are that we'll have the same problem this year. We're going to have no real funding announcements for local authorities until December. And I think the Fire Authority has always been very cognizant of what settlements are given to local authorities in terms of the resources that are available to them to actually fund fire budgets. So I think we will be into the sort of contingency plan on that budget decision time frame. And it will be probable that we'll be looking at a December consultation with regards to a February budget setting again for this coming financial year, which is disappointing because we would like to set the budget earlier to give our funding colleagues an earlier look at what's required. That's all I want to say on the report. A slightly updated version of this report will be going forward to the Fire Authority next week. So it'll give members a first look at that at the Fire Authority. And we will be doing an update for the scrutiny group in October, which will be looking at some of the detail of this, why some of the decisions are being made, some of the principles behind it, and hopefully some of the updated figures as well, if they become available during that couple of week time scale as well. So that's all I want to say, Chair, at this moment in time.
I think that people are waiting to get some questions, Chris. So.
Yeah, I've got Councillor White and then Councillor Smith. Councillor White, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I should be unmuted. Am I muted? Hey, Chris. Thank you for the report. As we know, COVID could be with us for another year, right? We're not talking about a vaccine until maybe halfway through next year. So what kind of are you already allowing for COVID an impact on our service? Are you allowing it in the budget? Or is that really an unknown figure you're scratching your head about?
At this moment in time, Councillor White, I mean, obviously we have the funding stream from Welsh Government, which is funding the majority of the costs associated with the necessary expenditure on COVID. So that's seeing us through, subject to the conversation earlier on the ICT costs, of course. The main impact will be whether or not we are able to sort of keep the community safety aspects going. But again, that's grant aided, so it shouldn't impact directly on the revenue budget. So at this moment in time, we're not expecting any significant, or not planning for any significant impacts on the Fire Authority and the core budget. We've got the sort of various grant schemes that are balancing a lot of that off over the next 12 months, we hope.
Cheers, thank you, Chris.
Now, Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I think as an authority, we've always kept within our budget, haven't we? Except for 1 year when initially the authorities were formed. A bit of a daft comment I was going to make, actually, that we, obviously can give an indication to authorities as to what might be coming down the line. It's not our fault. We've always behaved well and been right and properly conducted. But yeah, they've got an indication the beginning of December when the consultation goes out. So there will be an awareness before the last thing. Yeah, just ruminating to myself, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, it's probably worthwhile reminding members the distribution aspect of our budget in terms of how it impacts on the 10 local authorities is driven by population numbers. And every year there's a tendency for a bit of churn within that equation, so that there is if the authority sets, for instance, a 4.3% increase, it doesn't necessarily follow that every authority would see a 4.3% increase. Some might be higher and some might be lower. Now, I am aware, yet again, that there is a significant rebasing of population figures likely to come through the local government settlement this year. And that, therefore, could redistribute the fire contributions budget quite significantly in the coming financial year. I won't sort of scare the horses by giving indications of which authorities might or might not be affected positively or adversely. But what I will say is that the numbers are quite significant. Again, those numbers will be reflected in the local government settlements for each of those authorities as well. So the money kind of follows the population shares. But just so members are aware of that when we come to see the impact on individual authorities, don't follow a headline figure and assume that's it. There is another factor at play in terms of the distributional aspect to it.
There we are. Any other members got any questions? As Chris explained, a lot of this is due to unknowns. We've got to work with best with what we got at the moment. The recommendations that the committee agrees to the report content as to the basis of its financial planning framework for consideration by the Fire Authority. Sal, did you want to?
Okay, yeah, please. Councillor Hussey.
Yeah, agree, Sal.
Councillor Spencer. Councillor Spencer.
Agree.
Councillor Colbrand. Does that agree? Yeah. Councillor White.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agree.
Councillor Smith.
Agree.
Councillor Drake.
Agreed.
That, again, is unanimous.
Well, thanks, members. If we now move on to item 10, which is Audit Wales Involvement Review, page 105.
Yeah, I think if I let Steve Frank from Audit Wales come in on this one first, and then if there's any bits I need to pick up on after, I can.
Okay, that's great, Sal. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. That's excellent. Yeah, this is the report based on the work we did with you last year, so it's 2019-20. but actually, when I've actually read through some of this again, it does feel a bit out of date now, really, to be perfectly honest. But some of the things are still entirely relevant. So things like sort of station, all sort of station open days, sort of seems like a sort of golden period, really, now, doesn't it? But overall, it's a pretty positive message. And what we actually did do is that we looked at two things in a bit more detail around involvement. So one was how folks have been involved in the sort of equality and diversity strategy, and also how the Fire and Rescue Authority sort of plans and looks at sort of events. So that's around open days, around the sort of rescue sort of event a year before last, and other things around there, really. And we did find loads and loads of good things that kind of came out of that. On page, where are we? 108. So what we are auditing, a reminder of actually what we're auditing, it's the Sustainable Development Principle as part of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And what we've actually done in the last couple of years is we've actually picked one of those ways of working, sort of 5 ways of working. And actually last time we actually looked at involvement. The year before, we looked at collaboration and partnerships, and actually found actually lots of actually good stuff there, and a bit more sort of tweaking to do there to kind of sort of tighten some of that stuff out. So the actual last time was on involvement. And then on the next page, on Exhibit 2, the old, well, so we actually thought about sort of doing this as a kind of, sort of snakes and ladders kind of board game, and then we thought, no, that's actually far too flippant, because it's quite a serious subject, really, this. So, but actually, sort of where there are strengths is sort of most of those sort of boxes in Exhibit 2. The kind of weaker areas are the kind of last ones, sort of bottom right hand corner, around evaluation, and then the sort of 5th one along, it's actually making sure that the kind of impact of involvement is sort of crystal clear. So you guys have done all this fantastic work, sort of involved staff, the kind of public, partners, stakeholders in lots and lots of things, and it isn't always clear about what's actually changed as a result from that, really. But I'll pick up on that shortly. So paragraph 6, the scope. Paragraph 7 of the report is our sort of overall message. So it's some good stuff, but actually evaluating what's been done, and the kind of so what questions. So in the kind of back of our minds as auditors, we always have kind of so what question. We always ask that, and that's not to be aggressive or to be flippant. That's just asking. That's kind of how we work in the performance audit side. Is actually we kind of see and hear lots of good stuff, but it's always that, well, yeah, so what? So lots of really good stuff around sort of equality and diversity, and as we kind of track down through paragraphs 8, 10, and 11, lots and lots of really good things in paragraph 11. So it's actually worth a sort of minute or two, so when you get a chance to have a read of paragraph 11, because there's loads of really good stuff actually going on here. Very, very impressive. And I think having a look at all the other kind of UK fire and rescue authorities, some of this stuff's actually nationally leading too. It's very good. Yeah, paragraph 12, 13, 14 onwards, it's all pretty good. Then we get on to the sort of less good stuff, if you like, starting in sort of paragraph 18, really, which is actually quite kind of hard to kind of who to actually involve, because there's some sort of transient sort of elements of your kind of population here. Sort of students is a kind of obvious, sort of very, very sort of topical issue here, and then the university sort of bearing in mind that across Wales currently, it's the largest sort of migration of people going on across Wales at the moment, with students sort of moving around really sort of far more than sort of tourists coming in, interestingly. Paragraph 19, lots of really good evaluation going on, the old sort of Safer Together project, but there's just some sort of scope to sort of involve more people in that, and to actually feedback actually what you've actually learned. And I've I've kind of highlighted something I've seen elsewhere, which is this "you said, you did" kind of summary on your website or a report to members or whatever, really. And also very important to actually involve young people and partners in some of this stuff, sort of website design. So and the sort of Facebook stuff. So basically, my daughter's 15 now, and she's always telling me sort of Facebook's for old people, which I kind of find a bit abusive. But actually, that's actually how they sort of think. And bearing in mind, over the last sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, or not so young folks have been working at home, studying at home. And of course, they want to see what's actually going on, how to actually stay safe. But I'll come back to that in a minute. Paragraph 20. Crikey, lots and lots of performance indicators here that is actually reported on, and there's actually a danger that it gets a bit noisy and a bit sort of too much is actually being considered, really. So I think there's actually a job of work to do to sort of perhaps at a rational to really sort of rationalise that perhaps a bit more, really. So moving on. Lots and lots of really good events are linked with all sorts of local and regional and national stuff. Really good stuff. And I've actually been to quite a few of those things. So I've actually seen some of this stuff firsthand, spoken to lots of people out there, really, really good, actually well planned, considered, thoughtful, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's all pretty kind of positive stuff, really. The actual next one, paragraph 26, really. So lots of good news around sort of increasing capabilities in some sort of key areas, performance management, sort of finance, things around sort of data analysis, that sort of stuff. But there's actually a danger that there's actually so many sort of strategies and forums and groups and plans and that kind of stuff that sort of must be actually fairly hard to kind of look after, really. I think on your website last time I looked, there was something like 42 key plans and strategies. So there's some opportunities there to really sort of integrate some of this stuff, I think, really. And then we did have a look at sort of what you've done since actually we reported this time last year. So lots and lots of good progress in terms of the kind of audit we did around sort of collaboration. But there was actually less progress that actually we saw at that time when the report was published on long-term workforce planning and also sort of road safety activity. Now, since actually we actually published this report sort of back in April, sort of things have actually moved on in these areas, and we'll be picking that up again in actually this year's work, which will be on corporate resilience, really. So things around sort of workforce planning, HR, finance, or business continuity and management, that sort of stuff will be a bigger feature of our work shortly. And then we made some comments in sort of paragraph 30 and 31, sort of bearing in mind that some of the kind of hard to reach groups are obviously still hard to reach, and it's just important to sort of bearing in mind that those actually people are kind of still there, really. And then lots and lots of opportunities to actually use all this information that you've actually gathered over the last year or 2, 5 years or whatever it be, basically use it as a sort of a strategic resource, really. And that's that, really. So it's all pretty positive stuff. I've actually included on page 116 sort of proposals for improvement, which are just a sort of a standard sort of self-evaluation. Sort of, should you sort of feel the need to have a look at this again at any time, and then sort of Appendix 1 are examples that I've actually gathered from elsewhere, really, Scotland, East Sussex, and West Yorkshire, etc., etc. So that's that, really. So sort of fairly positive, but actually a bit more sort of tweaking, sort of tightening up to do in some areas. But there's actually nothing there that was horrible, horrendous, or looked actually sort of super risky, really. It was all pretty good. So I'm going to save my West Country dulcet tones now, and just if that's okay with you, and just take questions. If that's okay.
And I think just to add to that, from a service perspective, I get a reverb back somewhere. Well, Steve, I'm going to mute you a minute just in case it was you. Obviously, we've got the communication and engagement group set up within the service who are going to be looking at this report in more detail and how they can take bits forward. I know the team are also looking at how we continue with our engagement work in the new COVID world we find ourselves in, particularly across some of our vulnerable groups who may not have access to ICT platforms. And you'll have seen the start of some of that in the performance report you considered earlier on, where some of the detail around the strategic themes highlighted some of the new innovative ways of trying to work. I think the evaluation point is a perfectly valid one. We're not as good at evaluating post-involvement as we are at trying to get some of these events set off. Quite interestingly, I noted my diary this weekend. It was supposed to have been the 999 weekend, of course, the weekend that we've just had. So we would have had another brilliant weather weekend had that gone ahead. Happy to take any questions.
I got one. I thought it was an excellent analysis of what the service is doing. And I just think it probably has some tweaks where we need to update and everything. But I thought it was a very, very good audit of our responses. And like I discussed earlier about engaging with the communities, particularly with the food banks, we're always looking for new and innovative ideas to speak to our communities, which we're doing. And I commend the service for that. Anybody else would like to raise any questions, Sal, about that? Or well?
Councillor Smith?
Only myself. Say, like you, Chairman, I think it's a very constructive and fair look at the service and what we're doing. Thank you.
Anyone else like to raise anything? Well, no.
I think that report's just for noting.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is it
Chair.
ready? Yeah. Does
So
everyone
unless there's any
that report? Yeah, that's all right.
No one's indicating they're not.
Yeah. Okay. Right then. Thanks for that report anyway. I enjoyed reading that. We move on to item 11, the audit of the South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority 2020 to 2021 improvement plan. And that's on page 123.
I'm assuming, Steve, you're going to take this one too?
Yeah, that's just fairly sort of straightforward, really. That sort of basically says that you've basically gone through the hoops in the old sort of measure, really, and that's fine.
Everybody read it? Is there any questions you want to ask from that? No.
No, that's just showing we complied with the statutory.
Yeah, no, that's fine. To make sure there's no questions or anybody wants to read.
And the local government measure is actually still with us currently.
Yeah.
Shame, I can hear the sort of violins playing in the background, but they may be going shortly, which actually, from our perspective, we'd actually sort of far rather be doing sort of some more sort of audit work that basically adds a bit more value than basically compliance of bits of paper, really. But that's actually what we have to do, and that's all fine. So there we are. Everyone's happy.
As the saying goes, we can't change what happened yesterday, but we can change what happens tomorrow.
Absolutely right. That's it. Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
And the recommendations are that members note the issue of the Certificate of Compliance for the Order of the Authorities 2021 Improvement Plan, which is incorporated in the Strategic Plan 2020 to 2030.
Yeah.
Right. Sally will have to go through when members agree. But thank you for
Councillor Hussey?
Yeah, noted and agreed.
Councillor Spencer? Councillor Spencer?
Just me 2 minutes, all right? Just me 2 minutes.
Sorry? Councillor Spencer?
Agreed.
Okay, December.
Okay. Councillor Colbrand? Agree. Councillor Evans?
Agreed. Noted.
Councillor Drake?
Noted and agreed.
Councillor Smith?
Agreed.
Councillor White?
Agreed.
Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. Item 12 now is Forward Work Programme 2020-21 on page 127. Sal, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just your standard forward work programme, which highlights the areas that you'll be considering at your next meetings. Happy to add any agenda items if members want to consider anything further.
Anybody like to raise any myself before we move on to? No, they're quite happy with your forward work programme.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent. And the last item now, to consider any items of business that the chairperson deems urgent, part 1 and 2. I have nothing to declare, so.
No, there are none.
So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the sunshine and keep safe, because that's the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Cheers.